Well, that's what happened. Okay, this is an interview of Harry Rosenthal at the Lexington Avenue Armory, New York City, August 7th, 2002. It is 10 a.m. in the morning. The interviewer is Michael Russert. You had an interesting story on your way here this morning, sir?
Yes, I'm a heart patient. I had a triple bypass in June of '90, and I had 2 stents put in May 8th and May 20th. So I felt pain for the extent of my left arm, and I didn't want to disappoint Wayne or myself. So I went to the hospital, which is 3 blocks from me, at 3 in the morning. I walked there. I didn't call the ambulance. And I checked myself in, and I was undecided if I want to admit myself because I know what I have to go through. They jab me full of needles, they draw blood. You have to wait for the troponin levels. If they go down, and they take 8 hours apart, they keep you there overnight. And then your veins close down because they jab you so much, and I didn't like the thought of that. So I made an agreement with the doctor that I should stay there 2 hours for the first test, and the next test is 8 hours. So I went for the 2 hours. So at 5 o'clock, I was sitting there till 4:30 or 5. He drew the blood, and then at 7 o'clock he told me it's okay. But he said, you're going home against our advice, so you have to release yourself. So I signed myself out.
Just to come here.
Yeah, but I didn't like the idea of staying overnight in the hospital because I've gone through it so often.
Yeah.
So,
Well, we appreciate that very much.
so
Well, could you tell us your full name, your date of birth and place of birth, please?
Harry Rosenthal, 3/20/24. It was in Brooklyn, New York.
Okay, and could you tell me, before you went into military service, what was your educational background?
I had high school. I didn't go beyond that. And I had plenty of jobs up until the time the war broke out. Couldn't get any jobs because you were capable, eligible for the draft. So I waited, and then when it came my turn, they sent me a letter, greetings and salutations. And at the time, Grand Central Terminal was the induction center. So we went there, the big station, and there was an Army officer, lieutenant, and a young lieutenant from the Navy at JG, junior grade, and there was a Marine lieutenant. So when they saw all the blue marks on my health chart, so they put me in by the Marines and the Navy. And I said to them, no, I said, I want to go to the Army. He said, I'm sorry, son, you have no choice. You can either enlist in the Navy or the Marines. And so I said, I can't be drafted. He says, no, not at this time. So I went to the Navy and I enlisted.
Can I go back a second? When you heard of Pearl Harbor, what happened there? Where were you, and what do you remember from that?
Oh, I remember, but I didn't know it was a U.S. possession. I didn't know what it meant, territory of Hawaii, until I got to Pearl Harbor, which was about 3 years later. I was stationed there for a year, from 1944. I think September to September 45.
Well, where were you when you heard the exact news of Pearl Harbor?
I was in the streets. I don't know what I was doing. Maybe I was playing ball. Or I know it was a Sunday. I remember that. And all those old streets had all the tenement houses and some wooden houses, railroad flats that nearly all of us lived in. And when we heard that, we said, where's that? So We found out later where it was.
Okay, why don't we go back then, so you joined the Navy, and could
I
you tell
joined
us?
the Navy, they gave me a week off, and we went down to, I think it was 20 Whitehall Street, not far from where the World Trade Center was. And it wasn't there then, of course. And then they had the people, the inductees in the Navy. There's regular Navy, I think there's USNR, Naval Reserve, and there were Seabees. So I didn't know, and I found out later, never volunteered. So I raised my hand, I said, I want to go to the Seabees, which is construction battalion. And I found out that you fight and you work. Well, if I have to fight, why should I work? So I got out of it. It took me 2 hours before another lieutenant says, you're in here now, you stay in this group here. I said, no, I want to go in the Naval Reserve. So he said, okay, get back with the other bunch. And that time on, I was in regular Navy. So I didn't go to the Seabees because I knew the Marines and the Navy were in the Pacific. And it was pretty bad there. Well, I didn't know I was going to go to Normandy. So I got my share anyway. So from then on, from I think it was February 43, February 19th, they sent us up to a boot camp in Sampson, New York, right near the Canadian border. And we were in boot training for about 3 months. But they weren't well equipped. Well, we went around the drill field with a full sea bag, and that was pretty heavy. Walking around there and marching, cadence. And then what we had to do was learn how to use whale boats, which are aboard ship. And they're used for safety when ship is going under. Well, we didn't have any whale boats to practice on, so we had beams to sit on and something in the shape of a boat that was arched like a whale boat. It's about 25 feet long, I think. And then we had 2x4s used as oars. So 8 of us on one side with the 2x4s and 8 on the other side. And it was snowing. And the guy at the helm was howling, heave, ho, something like that. And it looked like Washington crossing the Delaware with the snow coming down, and we were on grass that you couldn't see, and it was full of snow. And here we were, heave, ho, just to get the idea. So we did that a few times, and then I wasn't used to that kind of life, washing the clothes.
Was this your first time away from home?
Yes, it was. It was. And, well, there were some good times in it, but that came later on. But over there in boot camp, it was very cold, and I wasn't used to eating that kind of food. Not at all. I didn't know what SOS was. You know what that is, right? So, and I never had any of that food before. And I used to go to the PX, well, the Army calls it PX. We didn't call it that. We called candy, pogey bait, and ice cream, geedunk. And when we had that, I used to go there to eat the candies and the ice cream instead of the food. Whatever I had money in my pocket, I went over there to eat. I couldn't stand the food. And unless it was, sometimes they gave you on a Sunday, they baked cake, or they gave you eggs. So I got used to the food later on in different parts of the world. And we stayed 3 months, and then they shipped us to the USS Alcor, a training ship that was in Norfolk, Virginia. Well, the ship never left port. It stayed there. And, well, we were on there for about 3 months, I think. And we used to get Liberty weekend passes or Liberty by the day. and the place was full of sailors, loaded with sailors. Nobody liked sailors there. They couldn't wait to leave, and they couldn't wait for them to get rid of them. Then another batch would come in from different training stations. So I stayed there, and then they shipped us out. They sent us from there on an LST, pulling out of Norfolk, Virginia, to Halifax, Nova Scotia. Well, we didn't know what we were going to get into, but there were, I don't remember if it was 10, something like that, LSTs. I was on 531, and there were 6 British corvettes convoying 72-ship convoy across the North Atlantic. And there were German U-boats there. And it was freezing. The guy in the forecastle on the bow of the ship, he had about 40 pounds of gear on him. And you couldn't even see his face and his eyes. And he was always there, he's looking out there for subs. And they would give us duty 24 hours on and 24 off on the watch. So we had about a 30-foot tower to scale. It was like the firemen's use. It's a long pole and it's got bars on the side to grab on. And out in the North Atlantic, it was stormy and ice cold, and you couldn't see anything at night. I don't see how you could see a sub with a periscope there. Impossible. And the weather was bad, and the ship would pitch at a 25 or 30 degree angle, and you're up there knocking on the door. I was a little boy, and he's a Lieutenant JG. He says, "All's well below, sir." Aye, aye. And you climb back down there, and you go below decks, you know, where it's warm. And the LST was loaded with tanks, trucks, jeeps, ammo, everything. So about 500 miles out, 2 LSTs turned back. They had problems. Well, we were about 1,500 miles out, the point of no return, and we had a hobble in to Glasgow, Scotland, because the rudder was broken. So they had 3 of us. They were calling down degrees of where to steer the ship. So we'd all take turns. So we did that, and 1,500 miles into Glasgow, we stayed in dry dock overnight, and then we went down the English Channel, the Irish Sea, and we went to Plymouth, England. And that was in March of 1944. And when we got there, well, we saw a bombed out city, and they put us in Quonset huts, or barracks, I forget which. And we saw these balloons up there with cables attached, and realized it was filled, I think, with hydrogen. And that's for the German Luftwaffes not to come in and strafe the city, which they did. So that's why they would clip their wings. So we stayed there, and I was a courier there, and I didn't know how to drive, and I didn't want to know how to drive. So there's this other sailor. He was from upstate New York, and I used to wake him, Horan, H-O-R-A-N. I used to wake him up every hour, as long as I was on duty, because I needed a driver. So he got disgusted. He says, "I'm going to teach you to drive." I says, "No." I says, "You take the watch." So I got behind the Jeep with him, and I didn't know how to shift with the clutch and all that, and we were jerking. We had to go about 2 or 3 miles away, just with a little letter. And it was high security, and it was the British about 3 floors down, about 2 miles away. Well, I stepped on the gas, and he almost flew out, and I was going fast and slow. And I finally got there, and he was there. Then he said, next time he says, don't wake me up anymore. So I was really nervous. Don't wake him up anymore. So I got the 45 in my hip, and I got a Jeep. So I used to go to the motor pool, and each gate was about 20 feet wide. Of course, they have trucks and weapons carriers there. So one day, he didn't have any Jeeps, and he doesn't know from anything, the guy on duty. I give him my pass, and he gives me a weapons carrier. And that thing, well, they look like amphibious. They're huge. I says, and 10 forward speeds. I says, where do I start? And I was embarrassed. So he goes in his hut, he opens up one side. I said, that's not enough for a Jeep. So he opens up the other side. I said, okay. I couldn't wait for him to go inside. I feel he was hidden from my view. So I got out, I drove there, but I was really nervous with that big thing. And I got there and I got back. And as I progressed, you know, I got to be a little bit better. I didn't know the driving was so difficult, maybe not on a little Model T Ford or a 34 Chevy. But I found out later it was much easier. I figured everything's going to be as bad as this. So I ended up learning to drive, not too well over there, but we stayed there about 3 months. And the city was all bombed out, and they ran dances in the local church. And we didn't have too many good times. And you couldn't get any sweets, no candies, nothing at all. And I love the sweets. So then there's a guy from Texas, Dallas. His name is Robert Darwin Benefield. So we were going to town, and I said to him, I want to get some cake, and you need a chit. And there's all women online. So he called me Rosie by my last name, Rosenthal. He said, hell, Rosie, you can't get nothing there without a chit. I said, come on, I'll show you. So I waited in line, fifth, next one to go. And the young girl behind the counter, she was like 15. And she says, yes, sir. I said, I'd like to have some cake. So I put on a British accent. So the mother in the back says, child, what are you doing? And she says, mother, he doesn't know our money. I says, oh yes, I do. One of you, you know. Yeah, look here. So he was laughing. And she gave me some cake. You know, she saw we in uniform. So we had cake, and then we went to other places, and we tried to eat someplace instead of having the GI food. And they paid us in that, looked like diplomas, that 5-pound note. You don't get much for $20, $21 a month. You get one piece of toilet tissue, it looked like. So he loved beer. I'm not a drinker, so we went to go someplace to eat fish and chips, and everything was down in the dungeon, no lights. You couldn't see anything if it's open or closed. So we ended up somewhere, and then when they had air raids, they used to have smudge pots going around the city. It looked like a 1936 truck, square. And they would have smoke coming out of it to hide the city from the bombers, from the Germans. And then when you come back to your bunk, everything, the pillow, everything would smoke. We were on cots. And then they went to the bomb shelters. You saw rats there, you saw water there. It was sloppy. Nothing but you thought it would be a bomb shelter. And we ended up going down there and coming back to our bunks. And I made an end table out of a crate so I could put my clothes in there. Anything would do. So after that, March, April, May, and then it was, oh yeah, the LST 531. went out for maneuvers and it was sunk by a tin fish. It was hit the LST midship, and the thing went down because that thing is hollow. And I knew some of the men on board. I met them when I was going across on the LST, but they were assigned. And lucky I was off. I was a courier.
For someone that's not sure what that means, what is a tin fish?
A torpedo. And it struck it. And I think they told me it sunk immediately. And then I saw the names on the roster. Who wasn't? They were in burning oil, I heard. And well, we didn't know where we were going, but it was June when it came early morning. It was June 6th. I don't remember if we left June 5th, we went in the channel. Or early morning, I know it was June 6th, because I was assigned to Admiral Moon's staff. There were 40 of us. And we were assigned to the USS Bayfield. It was a hooligan ship. A hooligan ship means it's a Coast Guard ship. And we were passengers and they were ship's company because they were attached to the ship. So we were doing our jobs, decoding messages. They called it a HAG machine, H-A-G. And we were doing whatever we were told to do, and there were other Coast Guard guys on the Yak, the 50 caliber, fire and get the planes. And they say they're ours, so the guy would say, who knows whose it is? They just don't fly over here. And they kept shooting at them no matter who came over. And when we were attached to that ship, we went into we were in the channel, and I think we hit Omaha Beach. I never left the ship, but there were big water mines with tentacles. They were huge. They looked like 8 or 10 feet tall when you could see the half of it with the tentacles sticking out. And we were pulling Germans aboard who were hit, and some of the men didn't even get a chance to go down those ropes to get onto the small craft. But they weren't hitting us with the shells because we were about 3 to 5 miles, I think, off the shoreline. And they were pulling up the American soldiers, the sailors, out of the channel, and the Germans, and they would, on the small craft where they were wounded, they would put 6 or 8 stretchers, and they put a cable or a rope, like a V, and they'd have a lower the boom with a hoist and pick up 8 at a time and putting them on the quarterdeck towards the bow of the ship. And there was hardly any room to stand. You couldn't stand there. So we had everybody aboard. And then one of the Germans, he had a hole in his back as big as your fist, and he was asking others he had a cigarette. I says, no, I don't. I wasn't smoking. And everybody was aboard, and there was no room for anything. And I didn't realize later, I saw them baking bread before. I don't know if it was on land or aboard ship. They were baking bread and putting it in the freezer. Now, I don't know why, but I found out later. Because when they were sewing the stiffs up in canvas, they were putting them in the freezer. And I realized the bread is there. So I lost my appetite for the bread. And I'm not a coffee drinker. So it was very limited to what I had. But men did what they had to do. They drank it, they ate it, and there was whatever you can get. And finally, it was D+5, I think, and we left the English Channel. And we thought it was over. Now, my case, I don't think mine was so severe as some of these men hit the shoreline. They really got it bad. I felt bad for them, really did. And the guys aboard ship, only if they were sunk or they hit a mine, because it was the worst storm of the channel, they said at the time. And they had these big anchors with these chains that were as big as my forearm, each side, and they were breaking loose from their moorings. And the ships were floating loose in that channel with the mines. So it was dangerous, but these guys, they really took a beating, the ones who hit the beaches. Plus, I didn't see the beaches at the time, but I saw it in movies myself when I saw the pictures, even the movies before these that came out now, the ones that were 60 years ago.
Now, did you have medical people on your ship that were taking care of these wounded?
Yes, we had not as many, but it was a pretty big size ship. I think it was a transport. It was the flagship. They had a few flagships. So Admiral Moon he was the flag on the flagship. And they had medical people doing whatever they can, but not nearly enough.
Now, did they transfer these wounded to another ship, or did you wait until you...
No, they waited. We pulled out with them. But it was D+3 or 4 when they sent over the V-bomb. And I saw it on the Hag machine, and we didn't know what the V-bomb was. Jet propelled, so we said, gee, because the 16-inch guns from the battleship and the cruisers, the 5-inch, they couldn't, the salvos couldn't reach the shoreline. Well, so the big ships did. But when they had these from the shore coming over, they could hit Britain. So, you know, we started to realize that you're not fighting anybody who's firing a gun. You're just sending a shell over there. And wherever they hit, they hit. So we ended up pulling out, and we went down through the Mediterranean Sea, and we stayed in Oran, North Africa. And it was stifling. I think it was like the desert. Our sheets, the Arabs were buying them for $25 a sheet if you wanted something, this sheet. And we stayed there about a month. And we were walking in the streets around there, and Bayfield had his sunglasses and his midi, and the Arab kid runs over, picks it on him, and he started to chase the Arab kid. I said, you better not. I said, look behind you, because you don't know what they're carrying in those sheaths, and they got sheets over them. So he stopped running. I said, let him keep the sunglasses. So he stopped, but we didn't know where we were because it was new for everybody. 5 cents a beer, which I don't drink. What a shame. So we stayed there about a month in the heat, sweating in your sheet. And they said they put us aboard ship. I think it was the same ship. And we went to southern France. There was another invasion there. And we didn't know that, but they told us later. But that was easier because it was only about 2 days, because the Germans were moving inland. They already hit them from the Utah and Omaha Beach and Cherbourg Peninsula. So when we got to southern France, I got off the ship. We stayed there, I think it was about 3 or 4 days only. And they anchored and they let us swim off the ship. They tied a line onto a life preserver. No, what do you call the donuts? Lifesavers. They're about 25, 30 feet out. And you can jump off the side of the ship and swim in the Mediterranean, and then you come back. And we did that, and we got aboard ship, and we went to Naples. So we stayed in Naples about 2 months, I think. And Admiral Moon, we were still on his staff. I was a career, and I used to go with an LCVP, a landing craft vehicle personnel. It was a square type of thing, about 30, 40 feet long, I think. And I used to go get the mail. Well, at one time, while aboard ship, Admiral Moon put a gun to his head and he committed suicide. They called it battle fatigue. We don't know if it was or not, but that's what I was told. So we stayed there that time, and I remember cartons of cigarettes were 50 cents a carton. So now I'm going to make a confession. I was selling cigarettes maybe for $3 a carton if it was Raleigh. Lucky Strike went to war. I got $5 for Camels in Chesterfield. I think they had Pell Mell, but Raleigh's was giving coupons, like the S&H green stamps. So I would meet inside a public toilet in Naples, and I had the Italian customers. So I had a mail bag. I gave the guys $1 a carton. I sold for $3 to $5 a carton. So I was making a profit. The start of being a businessman. And when I got enough, I used to go shopping. I forgot the name of the fancy street. I bought leather gloves for my relatives back home, ladies, and I bought tortoiseshell combs, $5 a comb. Well, when you don't pay much for it, so it's pretty cheap. And I came back with some prizes. And after a while, I got tired of eating the food aboard ship, so I wanted to go have some eggs, and you couldn't get eggs. Nowhere. So some girl offered me eggs. I says, yeah, where's the chicken? She says, she took me to the building. They're big courtyards, the houses there, the tenements. And she says, you stay here. She went, I don't know, she got in a frying pan and she gave me 2 eggs. I think it was a penny a lira. I got $5 worth, 2 eggs, 500 lira, and I got eggs. And it was a real treat. And then there was another time where they had a billiard table. Well, I went to look at the table to play, and it looked like it was a lawn for golf because the hair was so long on there, it looked like a furrow. Well, I didn't end up playing, you know, but it amused me. And this is a billiard table. So we had that, and we had some fun. There were girls around, plenty of girls, and you don't know what you were getting. You took your chances. Well, I didn't get anything. I wasn't sick. But brothers were pimping their sisters. The mother and father was in the living room, not caring, offering you wine. If one British or American would go with the daughter, the other one would be waiting. And it wasn't like a typical turnstile, but it was war. So people were very hard up for money. Grandmothers were picking bricks out of the streets for pennies a day just to make ends meet, getting something, some money. An American dollar meant a lot. It was a lot of money. So I would go for the mail. I would go back, and they would hoist me above with the LCVP aboard ship, and I would be calling out the mail call. so-and-so. And anything that was broken packages you couldn't rename, I had to confiscate it. So you ended up with salamis, send a salami for your boy in the army. I had cookies, I had other things, but mostly food. And I tried to determine whose it was, and I shared it. So getting back to southern France, I was able to go ashore there. Strictly on duty, because I had to go get the PO, as well as I did in Naples. And when I went ashore, I was able to see the shoreline and low tide where the LSTs were letting off their tanks. And it was about 50 or 100 feet from shore, and you can see they look like pyramids, concrete pyramids. When there was high tide, the tanks would hit the beachheads, they couldn't see those things. So they would flip on their sides. The track would be on its side, and they couldn't make the shoreline. And these guys were getting shot. And that's when I realized it. And then a little further up the hill, you can see it like the side of a mountain, there were railroad tracks. And there were 16-inch German guns, big guns, and they were shooting at the ships at the Mediterranean or the English Channel. So you see what they had. And then they had pillboxes with like a 360-degree turret with 50 caliber machine guns coming out at every 90 degrees. And anything would come up the road, the 50 calibers would be shooting at them, because it was only a little pill, it was a mound, only about 8 inches or 10 inches high. It was a little pill, looked like a space carrier. So I saw how they were fortified. They did a terrific job, the Germans over there. And that's why so many men, those poor guys, got killed. Really, they never had a chance. I really felt bad. So we ended up leaving Naples after 2 or 3 months. And then they sent us back to Norfolk, Virginia. We had a week off, 7-day leave, and you couldn't get any trains or anything, so I hitched a ride on a car carrier where they sell new cars. Of course, there weren't any new cars. It was empty. I don't know what he was delivering, but he was coming back from dropping a load, and there were 2 or 3 sailors in a cab, and I was staying on the outside, and it was raining, it was cold, and I got back to New York. When I got back to New York, I was sorry. I should have stayed back at Norfolk, Virginia. There was nothing there, nothing worthwhile. I expected the home, but I was disappointed. But I was happy that the people were there, people I knew, but not too many were left. So we went back, I went back to Norfolk, and they put us on a converted carrier, and they sent us through the Panama Canal into the Pacific. And we went through the locks in the Panama Canal, and then we went to the Pacific, we went to Pearl Harbor. And the war was still on. It was before, I think, Iwo Jima and Guadalcanal. Well, we hit the Pearl Harbor yard, and we were still with Commander Wheatley was in charge since Admiral Moon killed himself. And he said, how many people want to stay at Pearl? And I remember them saying, never volunteer. But I knew the Marines were getting hit bad, and so was the Navy. So I said, I'm staying at Pearl. So there was about 8 of us. So they sent us to the warrant officer's mess. Now, it sounds awful, warrant officer's mess. Sounds like a chow hall. Nothing but food. But it was like a nightclub. And I had no idea. So they took us over there in a 41 station wagon, which I became the driver. So I wore a white shirt and just the sailor duck pants. You didn't know if I was a Navy or not. And I used to sign up the warrant officers who were 20 and 30-year men. And occasionally they'd bring in a young officer as a guest, and they would let him join for $2. They get one bottle of hard liquor, or it could be the other way around, 2 bottles of hard liquor and 1 bottle of wine.
I'm going to have to stop here and change tapes.
Beaches.
They picked him up on the beach, but
Yeah, well,
we didn't hit the beach. The others
Yeah.
did.
Okay, it's ready.
So we were in the Warrant Officers Club. They had a name for it too, as well as Warrant Officers Mess. And I used to sign up the naval officers, mostly naval officers, because it was the chief. He used to be in charge there. And there was a warrant officer in charge. He was from Albuquerque, New Mexico. And I think if he's alive, he's 100 years old by now. His name was Perry, P-E-R-R-Y. And Perry, if you're watching, oh, never mind. We had a lot of members. We had maybe 1,000 members. And I was a very good typist. I don't know if it was an Underwood or Remington or US Royal, but I used to run 80 words a minute manually. And I would sign, it didn't take much to sign them up. You fill out an ID card like a credit card, not fancy, cardboard, you know. And they would be entitled to the ration every month. And then we would run dances, Friday, Saturday, and I think Sunday. We had a big open floor. It was a beautiful place with palm trees. And I had a little office. And we used to receive 8,000 cases of beer every month. And I would check it in. And we received liquor and wines. And that was like a nightclub. It was beautiful laid out. So we used to sleep there. I was in charge of the place. And we had steward mates. And we had naval personnel. And we all dressed alike. No uniforms. And that's what I liked. I used to declare a dungaree liberty. Occasionally, go to town, go to Pearl. And well, we enjoyed ourselves there. I was having eggs. I had filet mignon, 7-Up, I remember, Coke. It wasn't Navy food. It was delicious. Pancakes whenever Mac and McLeod, the barber from Boston, we'd get our haircuts. We didn't have to tip them except the warrant officers who came and they paid for their haircuts. I don't know if it was $1 or $2. But he would make out good on tips. And then we used to gamble. Sky's the limit because you don't know what's happening the next day. So one card at the time would be $25, another guy would raise it 50. And we had 2 New York cops, detectives, playing in the game with us. And one guy folded, he ran out of cash, somebody else came in. But gee, you could run out of cash in one hand, the way they were betting. So we had a pretty good time there. I was stationed there a year. And there's a whole lot to tell about that year over there. I have pictures with me showing me my uniform, taken in a grass hut. And we hit, I remember it was April, we hit VE Day, and Roosevelt, he died April. I think we had VE Day, I don't remember if it was before or after he died. I think it may have been after he died. We had VE Day because Truman came in. But we had VE Day, and then after that we had Japan, VJ Day. Well, on VJ Day, I had a 1938 car I borrowed, and we were trying to celebrate, three of us. And when we went to town, the side of my car likely scraped a 1940 Oldsmobile. Well, I was on the carpet. But being that the warrant officer at the warrant officer's club had drag, so he says, come in. I thought I was on report, which I was. And then he says, forget it, it's squashed. So I was glad I left. I wasn't sent to the brig. I was happy about that. My record is clean. So we had good times, and there were plenty of women who came in. I couldn't associate with them because it was for the guests. And we were only swabbies, chiefs, storekeeper, first class, second class, you know, nothing big. So we couldn't associate with them except if we knew them on our own. So we had good times. And when that finally happened, it was, Perry was getting dismissed. And it was before VE Day. And then there was a sweet guy. He was about 32 years old at the time. And he took over Perry's job, and all of us were happy. Because Perry was rough. So his name was William R. Azevedo, Azevedo, and he was a native, but he came into the Navy from Honolulu. He lived there. And he was an awful sweet guy. I didn't know what to do for him. And he gave me money. He said, keep it. He says, you take it, you go back home. He says, I says, oh no. I says, Bill, this is yours. I mailed him back the check. I gave it to him. And this is about 7 years ago, 1995. I went back to Pearl to see if I could find him. Well, I inquired at the naval base. I brought these old photos, these little black and white that you took with the Kodak camera, the box, and I went to the naval intelligence. I went into town, and nobody knows where he is. I even called the other islands. There's 5 big islands. We were on Oahu. I called Hawaii, Kauai, Molokai. I called them long distance from the other islands, and nobody had ever heard of them. And one guy got on the phone. I says, you have a grandfather, a great-grandfather, who was William R. Azevedo? He says, that's my name. He says, what year? So I said, 1944. He says, forget it. So I couldn't find him. Finally, I went to the Navy Yard. Not the Navy Yard. No, yeah, I did go to the Navy Yard and ask him where the Veteran Cemetery is. I went there, and it was on a Sunday, and nobody was there. Finally, I went into the room all by myself, and I looked up his name. I found his gravesite. He had died 20 years earlier. I think he would have been, now, I think he would have been about 90. So he must have died at about 65, something like that. 60 to 65. Let's see, 1912. He was born 1912. I took a picture of the gravesite, and at 97, he would have been 65. So I found him there with his name listed, and I took a picture of the gravesite. And I didn't know where it was, so somebody happened to walk in, and he was an employee, a caretaker. He says, I'll show you the place. And he took me right there. And I stayed there a while, thinking, remorseful. And then I took off. At least I found Bill. And I went home. After that, I stayed there 2 weeks. But I had nobody close at home to tell it to because whoever I knew was in different states, and I didn't know if they existed anymore, if they were alive, and we didn't know each other that well personally. And when I came back to the States, I thought I'd be happy. I said, when I get back there, I'm going to get a good car, new car. I get a 41, a Pontiac, because they didn't make any from 40, the end of 41 or 42 to 46. They came out with the Kaiser Frazer. And those are the guys, the Kaiser Frazer, were putting LSTs together and transport, welding them together, 4 sections at a time. And they would split pretty easy, so the Kaiser Frazer car didn't last too long either. Neither did the Etzel. So I ended up, 5 years later, I bought a 1946 Chevy for $900, and I was paying it out in 2 years. And this thing burned more oil than it did gas. They saw a smoke screen in back of me because I was on my way to the Catskills, the Jewish Alps. Well, they saw me coming, and they could smell me leaving. What a smoke. So I kept the thing for 2 years, and I've had used cars, I think, about 8 or 10 of them for the next 20 years, I think. And I was thinking back, gee, what happened to that new car I was going to get back in 1945 when I was discharged at Lido Beach? It never happened until I got to be much older. So when I finally reached an age, I did get myself a brand new Chevy Camaro, white interior, nice tinted glass all around, air conditioner, 308, not cubic inches then, 308 horsepower, no, 240 horsepower, 308 cubic inches maybe, and that thing had power. Well, I had 13,000 miles on it. I paid $3,400 on it for it, and 9 months later they stole it. So there goes my new car. Boy, that was fun. And so they gave me back $2,200, book value. So I turned around, I said, I want another Camaro. They said it'll cost you $3,600. I said, forget it. So I went to a deal on Northern Boulevard in Queens, and I paid $3,300 for Plymouth Variant. It looked like a taxi cab. It was bright orange, but it was on the floor. And I said, I'll take it. So I took the orange car. I had it for 10 years. Till a lady got in front of me, and I hit her right in the middle. Just like the torpedo hit the LST. Because she came to make a left turn in front of me, and I was going in 4 lanes straight. And she stopped because she got nervous when she saw the other 2 lanes on my right going straight. And just then I put my head down to get something off the floor, which they told me 35, 40 years later, you shouldn't do that. So I hit her in the middle, and I told about my car. And from then on, I had more used cars.
How do you think your military service affected your life? In what ways?
Oh, I wasn't experienced at anything. I wanted experience. And I had jobs for $16 a week, $12 a week as an errand boy. And I couldn't get any jobs because I went to Picatinny Arsenal in Dover, New Jersey, and they wouldn't hire me. And you couldn't get any jobs, not unless you were 35 years old, and I couldn't get a trade. So I was really knocking myself out. And maybe the best thing was that but they didn't teach us any trades at the time unless you were put into a machinist mate, because if you were a swabby, you were setting signals, semaphore, and you worked as a yeoman, which I tried, but I didn't like the title they gave me. You know, fags and yeomans are queers. So I got out of that. And there wasn't anything, nothing worthwhile unless you were an electrician's mate. And I didn't realize maybe I should have applied for that. But I didn't have anything worthwhile, any knowledge before I came in and after I went out. And there wasn't anything to do. I joined the 5220 Club, which is $20 a week for 52 weeks. And after that, I kept looking for jobs, and I did a number of things. Anything just to get a job, but nothing worthwhile. So I ended up going to a grocery store business with my brother. He did before the war. There were 4 of us, and we all argued with one another. 2 of us were in service. He was in the Army, I was in the Navy. The other 2 were older, 10 or 12 years older, so they stayed out with a kid or 2. So we didn't have that luxury. And we had a bagel business, but they sold it on us because they were tired of it, lasting through the war, and the Depression years were awful. So they couldn't wait to get out of it, and we couldn't wait to get into it. But we had nothing to get into. So they sold that, and then they had a rich friend who was an accountant, CPA, told them to go into the toy manufacturing business. Well, that didn't work out after 6 months or a year. With the money they got from the bagel business, went into the toy business, and that was a loss. The 3 of them are dead now. I'm the only survivor. They 3 died of strokes at different times in the last 30 years. And my father died in 1934 of a heart attack. And they didn't have these things then. I had a heart attack in 1990, and I had a triple bypass. And just this past May 8th, I had a stent put in. I had another attack. And then May 20th, I had another stent put in because I was complaining, not chest pain, but shortness of breath. So they sent me back. So I saw the same doctors. I had the 8 ambulances in 10 days because I kept calling up. They say any kind of pain, nausea, arm, chest, angina, go right away to the hospital. So I kept calling the ambulance. Finally, they sent me back for another angiogram. I must have had 4 or 5 and 2 plasties. They sent me back, and the guy puts me on a table in Mount Sinai. He says, "Hi." I says, "Yeah, fancy meeting you here." He says, "I'm looking at the angiogram." He says, "And I gave you a picture of the first one." He says, "I'll give you another one now, the x-ray." He says, "That's blocked." I says, "Why did you do it the first time, 12 days ago?" I said, "It was $16,000, right?" He says, "Yeah." He says, "It's no 2 for 1. So I says, "Well, charge me again." I said, "I don't pay for it. I'm still working." So he gave me another stent. So I had 2 stents. And with that, I went home the next morning. So I started feeling better because that was the second blockage. And I've been home now since 3 months since I've had it. But this morning, on the way here, first time I had a repeated that I felt pain in my left arm, the full length of my arm, from my hand to my shoulder. And I got worried. I wasn't nauseous or anything else. And I knew I had an appointment to come here with Wayne. So I says, how am I going to keep this appointment? And I walked at 3 o'clock in the morning to the hospital, St. John's in Queens. And I wanted to come here. So I didn't want the ambulance because they start taking EKGs, start drawing blood, carry you down in a stretcher, make a lot of noise, and I've had enough of that. And I hate to go through the needles with drawing the blood and wait for troponin levels to come in until it's safe. So I went there, they kept me there for 2 hours, and they said, okay, from what we tell, you didn't have a heart attack, but you should go through the full process. Draw more blood 8 hours later, and another day, and you go home the next day. I says, no. I says, I'll release myself, I'll sign myself out. And I did that. Then I went home and showered, took a shave, and I came here to see these two guys.
Appreciate you coming. Now, did you have some things you wanted to show us?
Yes. That don't count. You got a pistol? You see my picture? Oh, you're still looking at me?
Yes.
Okay, this came from Senator Surf Maltese. He gave me this.
Okay.
And that's from France. They came here. And
Okay.
underneath that, yeah.
Okay.
This is from the cemetery. It doesn't show you much except that it's in Honolulu. This is one of the old photos from...
Now, where are you in this photograph?
A good-looking kid right here.
This is the Warrant Officers Club, Navy Yard, Pearl Harbor.
Okay. Got it.
This is where William R. Azevedo is buried. At this cemetery, I don't know if you want to show it.
The cemetery he visited in Hawaii. His friend is buried.
Can you hear me if I sit here?
Yep.
You could, okay. This is in Seattle, Washington, with the other sailor mates.
Okay.
And we went to the Trinon Ball.
And that's you on the right?
Yeah. No,
Oh, no?
this is me over here.
Oh,
Right.
The brother over there.
Okay,
That's
I'm
Robert
sorry.
Taylor.
Yep. Got it.
And this is me in Naples.
Hold it right there. Okay, got it.
What a good-looking kid.
Yes.
Here I am.
got it. Can you play the ukulele?
No, I only listen.
Okay.
This is a picture from about 19, let me see. I think it was 46 after the war. Turn the cover, show him the cover. He's not there anymore, Sandysboro. You remember Sandysboro, Father?
No.
He was there from when Eddie Canty used to be there and Mel Jolson. These are friends after the war.
Okay.
3 or 4 of them are dead, maybe more. Yeah, leave that with this. Give me the top ones. No, just the top. I want to separate it.
Okay, sure.
Yeah. And some new old clothes. I've made several contributions to the veterans, to the Ellis Island, and to the Statue of Liberty.
Okay.
Now, do you belong to any veterans organizations at all?
Yeah. Oh, I didn't bring the medal. I forgot to bring the medals. But this is. See, my name is in here. And this was a presentation by Senator Surfing Maltese.
Okay.
This is the immigration wall where I've donated. Okay, go ahead.
Okay.
What veterans organizations do you belong to?
Well, I carry this with me. I carry this with me.
Okay.
Yes, this is oh, you've seen this, right?
Yes, yes, sir.
Okay. Let me put this aside. Is this showing the picture? No?
Yeah, yeah,
You see them?
yeah.
You don't have to see them.
No, we got, what should held up. If you've got some more photos, because it's really hard to focus in on
Oh, okay.
printed matter.
Have to take a photo.
Yeah.
Let me see. All right. Let me get the photos.
I think we've seen all these photographs up here. I don't know if you have others.
This is the manifest much before the war of the people who checked in at Ellis Island.
Oh, hold that up.
Would you like to have that? See it? 1906.
1903.
1903.
No, I guess it is 6. Yeah, it's 1906.
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe people who watch it, they can see then age or something younger. That goes in here.
Is that it for the photograph?
Let me see, I'm looking for them now. I think that is for the photographs.
Okay.
Where's the other diploma? I got from Senator Maltese on one of his mailing lists. Oh, here's one. When he was giving me the medal, I got the medal home.
Okay.
I think there are more photographs. Wait. This goes in here. I'll take my time to straighten these out. One of them is pretty much the same as the other one. I think so.
Okay.
It's one of the whole group that received the awards.
Okay.
I've got those certificates, but I got them framed in the house. That's where I got them. See, Senator, sir, he said he thinks this would be of interest to me. He sent me this.
It's the article that's,
Okay.
that photograph we just saw.
Well, this is from Alice, when I make contributions to Ellis Island and the Statue of Liberty. See, they have, this is make-believe passport. You can look at it first. That's how they look at it. So read what it says when they had to check in. Literacy test
Right.
on the back page.
Okay.
You see this one? Maybe they can read the page inside, the tagging name. Look, turn the next one. Did you get that face? The face of it?
No.
I'll let them see what the face is.
Okay.
Yeah, these
And
are-
it tells about different people.
Can you see that closer? They able to read it? Maybe somebody will recognize a relative there from 1905.
Yeah.
He's running for re-election.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, he knows me. You got the certificate, right?
Yes, yes, I think we took everything. So, well, we appreciate you very much coming down for this interview.
I'm getting down to the last minute or two on this, so we're going to have to
Well,
wrap
this
it
is
up.
what-
Okay.
This is my parents when I go on the wall of honor.
All right.
Okay, well, thank you very much. We got two